Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this first episode in our mini-series on short-term missions. We're really excited to return after an extended break, and we want to say thank you for standing with us. Many of you have reached out to us to let us know that you've appreciated and you've missed the show, which really meant a lot to us. Thanks for tuning in today. It is good to be back. Now, whether you are joining us for the first time today, or you're a long-term listener, we would love for you to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find us now on YouTube and Instagram, and the links to all of those places are found in today's show notes. Our next few episodes will be focused on short-term missions. We know that many of you will be connected with a short-term trip in the coming months. As we record this, it's April 2025, and it's right around the corner for many churches. Whether you are yourself going off to the field or you're supporting someone, maybe you're even leading the team, our guest today has a lot to offer to you. We've entitled this conversation, The Heart of Short-Term Missions for Long-Term Impact. Our guest today on the Global Missions Podcast is Clint Archer, who was born and raised in South Africa and spent 14 years pastoring a church in Durban before moving to the United States. He serves as a pastor now in Mobile, Alabama. Clint and his wife Kim have 4 kids, and he brings a rich background of missions experience to our conversation today. Clint, you said you've traveled to 34 countries.
Yeah, that's right. I'm trying to get to 50 by the time I turn 50, so we'll see how that goes.
Right. Did you have to add extra pages into your passport for that, or?
Well, I became a citizen of the United States last year, and so I got a whole new passport to start over.
Okay, so you get a reset there. That's amazing. Clint's been involved in short-term missions for over 25 years, and so he brings a lot of experience, perspective, just an ideal candidate to help us think through short-term missions today. We're going to be talking to him a bit about his book. It's entitled Holding the Rope, Short-Term Missions, Long-Term Impact. And Clint, as we said before we started recording, this audience already knows and believes that is one of our goals. Short-term missions, but long-term impact. Thanks so much for joining us on the Global Missions Podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, so I got saved when I was in college. I grew up in a devout Catholic household, and I was saved under the ministry of an American missionary who was sent from Grace Community Church in California out to South Africa. And he had a tiny little Bible study on campus that I attended because there was this girl that I liked, and she invited me to go to this Bible study, and she didn't show up. But he was preaching through the Bible, expository preaching. It's the first time I'd ever heard the gospel clearly taught from Scripture, and I got saved. And very shortly after that, I felt the call to want to do the same thing, just tell people who didn't know. Basically, the first time I heard the gospel expressed clearly, I believed it. And so I'd grown up around it, but never really heard it. No one had ever explained it to me. So I had this idea that, hey, that's what I want to do with my life.
I think that's part of what will enrich this conversation too, that Clint has he's been on the team, he's helped prepare the team in pre-field, he's been the recipient, as it were, as a resident, I'll say, mission worker where you were in Africa, and I expect you've participated in the debriefing as well, pre-field and post. It's placed you in a spot where you can see the whole thing. Let me ask you this question, Clint. In your role as a pastor, how you think your experience in short-term missions, as broad as it is, how does that affect you as you serve now?
Well, our church, as many churches are missions-minded. We support full-time missionaries. And when we think through who we're going to bring on as a missionary, one of the things that we consider is, what is our relationship with that missionary going to look like? Is it just a case of, hey, we get a dot on the map, put a little red pin. Yay, that's another little spot on the map that we support, and we send them a check and really have nothing more to do with them? Or are these missionaries that we're going to be able to invest in long-term through relationships, where they are able to come to our church, where we're able to go to them, send missions teams to them so that their church gets to know our church? And I think that's what's ideal, if you can manage to build those relationships rather than just be a dot on a map. The other thing is that one of the things I learned in my experience that I now try to implement is that we try to treat our missionaries like celebrities, and also people who, when they come on furlough, they actually need a rest. And most missionaries, they go on furlough because they need to continue to deputize, or they have to go sing for their supper. You've got 20 churches that support you, so you're driving around the States, flying around the States, going to these churches, preaching, showing your PowerPoint. Hey, well, we support you. We want to see what our money's getting. Whereas I like to, wherever possible, say, we're just going to bring them out, put them in a beach house, and give them a week of vacation. You do not need to impress us with your ministry. We're keeping tabs on what you're doing. We're praying for you. We want to fellowship with you. You're welcome to present whatever you want. But, if you need to skip us this year, that's fine too.
Well, let me say thank you on behalf of mission workers and to those churches who have a similar view. Yes, support discovery or deputation is important, but thank you for blessing mission workers and their families with a break, and doing that in a way that's, going to be appropriate for however they fit into their home service season. Clint, I'd like to go to one of the statements you've made that's a little bit sort of controversial, maybe, or it sounds that way. It can sound that way. You make a claim that short-term missions aren't missions. Well, that's going to get some people's attention, right? Short-term missions aren't missions. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, and I don't mean to be provocative. They are a subset of missions, but my point there is that we ought not to confuse the people that are doing the actual work with the people who are really benefiting. So the people that have given up their family lands for my name's sake, as Christ said, and they have moved out of their culture, they've learned another language perhaps, they've adopted a new home country. It's a huge sacrifice involved there, and they are the ones that have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in their local church environment, what the people need, what the possible obstacles are, all those types of things. That's missions. That's we're holding the rope, you're going down into the pit. And when short-term missionaries go out there for 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and come back and act like they're the celebrities, that's kind of missing the point. You're the support staff. Yeah, you're the crew. But you're not missionaries. You're visitors. You're ministers. I think even perhaps a biblical term could be apostles. You're the sent ones to go and help these missionaries. But I like to view missionaries as celebrities in our church, and we don't get to hijack their title for ourselves just because we've been out there for a couple of weeks.
Oh, I like the humility that comes with that, right? This sense of where we fit in this, a valued contribution. Absolutely.
Hey, and if you want to be called a missionary, I'm all for it. Go be a missionary.
Right. Yeah, sure. Step up to that. Very good. You refer to short-term missions in another way. You call them arrows of kingdom warfare. Can you explain that image for us?
Yeah, just you've got your close warfare, and then you've got your distance warfare, right? You've got your broadsword. You got to get right up to the person to do that, and then you can also reach where you need to reach through the distance of arrows. And so the idea here is that we as a church, we can't all go there. We're not a whole army on the move, but from where we are, we can send something that's going to have an impact that gives us some distance. And in that sense, this is our air game, as it were. You don't want to use the terminology, these are the missiles we're launching out there, the gospel missiles. It sounds a bit aggressive, but the arrows, the distance.
So we see that there's the coordination of the long-term work, of a long-term worker, learning the culture, the language, and we have the complement of short-term missions. Your submission, Clint, has been that those arrows, as it were, should actually benefit not only the people that we're going to reach, but the missionaries themselves. What do you mean by that? How do you see value coming through these arrows joining the long-term workers?
Right. So the concept that I'm thinking of here is that of a target with a bullseye and concentric circles, and representing the goal of the trip and the focus of the trip regarding its benefit. So a lot of people benefit from short-term missions. The people going benefit spiritually. The locals there benefit. The missionary benefits. But what should our primary target be? And so my view is that it's not the locals. Often people think, well, the locals, that's why we're going. So we want people to join our trip. So we'll show slides, pictures of these locals who have it real rough and they need the Lord, they need ministry. We're going to go there and minister to them. Well, sure, they're definitely one of the circles that get benefit. But my view is that the missionary is the one that we need to be starting with. What does the missionary need? Because that's the person having the real impact, the long-term impact, the greatest impact on the locals and on the kingdom work. And so rather than us think, well, what are we going to benefit out of it by going? Certainly there's benefit there. And what are the locals going to benefit? Let's first say, well, what do our missionaries need? Because if our missionaries are taken care of and they're getting support for what they need and their vision for the field, then the field is going to grow and be blessed by that. And so that's what I mean by our arrows need to be aimed at the missionary. I always ask the missionary first, what is it that you need? And if your answer is we don't need a team, then we don't send you a team. If you need a check, we'll send you a check. How can our team come and help you? And sometimes the missionary will say, actually it's a burden for us. I mean, I've been on the receiving end, and there were times when you announced to the church, hey, we're getting our yearly team coming out from the States. We need volunteers again for them to, host homes, and there's gasoline money, and there's people that have to, and these ones have dietary restrictions, and this one's gluten intolerant, and it's a little bit of a burden. And now they also want to see some of the local attractions, so you got to book a day out of your week to take them around. And is it worth what we're getting for it, or could our people just do the VBS ourselves?
This is really, really important, I think. Sorry to break in on you, Clint. Just that those of us coming from a sending area hear that it is a weight actually on the receivers to have short-termers come there. And very often they will affirm there is great value, but it doesn't come without expense, time, energy. And if you can listen to that first question that Clint asked, do you need a team? And not assume that they would be delighted to have a short-term team come. That's a very important question to ask, and listen carefully, that it is about advancing the work of a long-term faithful servant that's on site there.
Yeah. And sometimes what the missionary needs is they just want fellowship from home. I mean, my wife, who's an American, who grew up at Grace Community Church, she loved it when the team from Grace Community Church came out. Our friends were on that trip, people that knew her church and her culture, and they would bring chocolate chips for us so she could make chocolate chip cookies because we couldn't get those in South Africa at the time. Or they'd bring us the latest season of a TV show that we liked on DVD because, they didn't have Netflix yet and that kind of thing. And those are huge blessings. And for us, it was definitely worth the cost of having the team there, the time burden. But there is a time burden, so you always want to check with your missionary. Is it worth the cost?
Well, this is just a brief interlude. We will continue our conversation with Clint in just a moment, but we'd like to share with you this week's featured tool. It's called the Go Journal. The Go Journal is a transformative tool designed to be your complete companion for short-term missions. It will help guide you and your team through preparation. It provides daily prompts and activities to be in God's Word and to be reflective while you're on the ministry field. And then we really focus in on resources to help unpack that experience after you return home. Our intention is that this would be an excellent tool to lift discipleship through short-term missions by equipping the team leader and each member who's part of that group. We're praying that it leads to lasting impact through short-term missions. You can check it out at gojournal.org and discover there how the Go Journal might enrich your church's next short-term trip. Now, back to our conversation with Clint. Clint, we know that you're an advocate for short-term missions generally and for great pre-field training. What are some of your priorities when you approach pre-field training?
So what we try to teach the people before they go, firstly, you want to teach them about the place that they're going and make sure that they're equipped to do the ministry that they need to do, get all the materials, the curriculum, whatever it is that they need. You also want to train them to submit to their leader. You can only have one queen bee in a hive, right? So you need to know who the team leader is and trust that team leader, because sometimes on the field, things arise that you could not have prepared for, and somebody has to make a decision, and this is not a democracy where we're now going to vote on this. I'll give you an example. one team we sent out was in a country where the border guards, as it were, the people in the airport, kept their luggage and were waiting for a bribe. And when it became clear that they weren't going to release their luggage until they got a bribe, the team leader just paid the bribe to clear the luggage. Well, that's not the right word, right? That's not a bribe. That's an extortion. That's a shakedown. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not circumventing justice. They are. You're just a victim. But because the word in the discussion used was bribe, some of the people on the team were like, well, this is an integrity issue. Christians don't give bribes to circumvent justice. And there was division on the team. And so what we try to train people is, you can have a problem with the decision that your team leader makes, and you take that up through me, the coordinator, when you get home. But on the field, what he says goes. We've had people disagree with the team of what they should do, where they should go, and then so they split up. No. We can't have the team in two different parts of India, two different parts of the Middle East. Like you guys have to stick together. If you don't like it, you take it up when we get back. So those types of things, it's just helpful for people to learn. I always made a big deal about how to look after your passport. Everyone gives the passport to one person, or if you're taking your passport, I would say you duct tape it to your leg. And if you have to choose, if the train is going and you have to choose between your passport and a limb, you choose your passport, because you can always get a prosthetic for your arm. But if you lose your passport, man, it is hard to get another one in certain countries, and so we would train them to do that, have copies of your passport in your luggage, each of you carrying each other's in case luggage goes missing, all those types of things, yeah.
That leads really naturally into what we want to ask about next. When you think about preparation, you talk about a certain type of interrogation. Tell us about the interrogation you think should take place before you go on a short-term mission.
Yeah, you need to interrogate the missionary. So you want to find out what the missionary's real needs are. You don't want to assume that they need what you think they need. You want to ask them, and you want to make sure that they feel free to answer honestly. So, for example, they might say, "Hey, we need you to send out a team because we want to build on a new youth room." And you might say, "Fine, we can send that team out." Or do you actually just need the youth room? If the youth room is going to cost $12,000 to build, we could send you a check for $12,000. Or we could send you 20 students. That's going to cost us $20,000. And then we're still going to help you finance the $12,000. And so it's going to be a very expensive trip, which is fine because our people are going to benefit from it. Are your people going to benefit from it? And they might say, yes, we love having young people here because our young people can start relationships with them and they can be life and life discipleship. And we really love seeing people serve. Or they might say, honestly, it's such a burden on our people to have your team here. We would just like the check. So you want to have a relationship with your missionary that they can be honest with you. Now, there's a lot of missions that you need people for. Like, you're going to do a vacation Bible school teaching English in Japan. Well, you need English people. So that's helpful.
Well, I appreciate you're also lifting the idea of having a relational integration with your mission worker wherever they are in an ongoing way. I was going to ask you, I'm curious whether you have a timeline for this interrogation, so to speak. How long before a trip do you need to do that? Really, it's, hopefully well in advance, but even beyond this particular meeting where an interrogation takes place, hopefully there's enough context to have a good sense of already what would be valuable. And this is just kind of confirming, and clarifying what would really be helpful at this time.
Yeah. Well, if your church is doing a short-term trip for the very first time to a missionary, I would maybe recommend you send one or two people out there to scope things out. So we do that. For example, we have a relationship with a missionary in Colombia. And so me and one of the other pastors, we're going to go out there. We're going to meet the people. We're going to ask them questions. We're going to look at what they say they need, what they really need. How can we help them? And then we're going to come back with photographs of all of that and pitch it to our church as we've now custom built a trip that they have asked for, that they've requested, that they need. And we have an idea. You can ask me questions because I've been there. And so if we were doing it for the first time, that's how I would do it. And once you've got an established relationship, they can just kind of say, hey, it's time for a team again. I usually start 6 months in advance where I'm talking to the missionary about, let's plan what you need, when you need it, how many people, what kind of people, so that it gives me a chance to find those people and then book their tickets well in advance, make sure they've got their passports and immunizations and the training and all of that. So 6 months, I think, is helpful.
That's helpful, I think, because it clearly puts it in anybody who's learning this for the first time. It's well in advance. There will be lots of questions up to 2 weeks and a week and an hour before the trip, but that's not the time to be asking those questions. It's well in advance, of course. You also talk about being educated, and I want to ask you about this in preparation. You say to your short-termers, you've got to educate yourselves. What do you have in mind?
Well, the more you know about where you're going, the better as well. I mean, when I went to Northern Ireland, one of the things I learned is don't ask the locals about the troubles. You know, it's just a sore topic. They don't want to talk about it with you. It's too difficult for you to understand anyway. Read about that beforehand if you want. That's helpful. And if you're going to a country where there's race relation issues, or you're going to a country where there's a class system, or those types of things, the more you know, the less chance there is you're going to offend someone just by accident. And so you want to educate yourself. Maybe if you're going to a place with foreign language, even if you're going to have translators, it's always nice to know a few phrases in that language just to show that you've made the effort. It's charming for the people. It's endearing. You know, please and thank you. Hello, where is the bathroom? Maybe a joke or something. And it just shows that you're viewing them as people that are worthwhile investing in, rather than I'm a tourist. You're there to take care of me, which, in the church, you're not going to have as big a problem. But honestly, that is something some Americans are known for. And I encountered on the field in South Africa where people come and, they're wearing their safari outfit with their binoculars because they've come to see animals. And now I got to take them an hour and 40 minutes away to some game park to see an animal because that's why they came to Africa. So you just want to educate yourself as much as you can.
Clint, I want to turn toward the idea of receiving. You were a worker serving in Africa and you were receiving foreign guests. What are some of the things that you wish they had been better prepared for?
We had very well prepared teams that came out. Sometimes some of the things that would make it difficult for our people is if there was, let's say, public displays of affection between dating couples on the team, which is a little different than a culture you might be going to. When I was training the youngsters, I would say you flirt on the flight back. If you are, a lot of guys are like, well, I'm going to join this team, or, a young lady joins a team because they're looking to meet other people of the opposite sex on their trip. Well, that's all fine and dandy. It's good to meet other people that are missions minded by doing missions together with them. But you'll deal with that on the flight back. On the way there, we're business only, those types of things. Or perhaps if there's a particular way that you address people in your culture, sometimes cultures are quite formal in that kind of address. I think of in South Africa, it's a little bit more casual. So you can call people by their first name or that. But when we went to Japan, for example, this person you refer to as sensei, this person you refer to as san. Those types of things. When people came to us, just because there was some ignorance perhaps of the race relations in South Africa and the history of apartheid and that, people would ask sensitive questions. How come there's no running water in that little village over there, but there is in this village? And then there's this kind of tension. Nobody knows how to answer that. It's kind of an awkward question. And so if people are a little bit more trained in that, you would know to ask the missionary the questions behind closed doors rather than in front of locals, perhaps.
Well, this just comes to the education portion that you mentioned as well, right? I appreciate you've mentioned here also some input from your missionary worker. We can use Google and now AI and all kinds of wonderful research tools to do research ahead of time. Let's make sure to have a good link with the mission worker so that they can feedback their particular situation. So we can be as thoughtful as possible and as gracious as possible. You said it earlier on not cause offense unexpectedly or inadvertently if we can avoid that. Well, if you were able to speak, Clint, to a team leader who's in the final stages of preparing for their team to go this summer, someone who's going in 2025, a lot of this runway has already been covered and they're looking forward to the airport. What would you like to say to those team leaders?
Well, you want to foster a sense of camaraderie that is spiritual among the team. So you're not a group of tourists that happen to be sharing a tour bus. You're a team. So you want to shepherd those people, set a pattern of perhaps leading devotions every time you meet, have frequent meetings with your team, share prayer requests among each other, and really emphasize the spiritual aspect of what you're doing. You're doing something for the kingdom. This is not just a holiday. It's totally fine to sign up for a 3-week trip to Israel to go and see the sights. That's different from going to minister to a local missionary who is in a church there, and yes, there will be some sightseeing perhaps on a day off. And so you, as the team leader, you need to set that example. And when you talk about the trip, don't talk about how great this country is and how wonderful the weather is and it's got the best beaches and oh my goodness, the shopping. You want to be focusing on the spiritual aspect. So just before you leave, make sure that everyone on the team is thinking that way. By then they should be thinking about how are we going to serve, not what are we going to get out of it. And then you want to already start preparing them for the debrief, and while you're on your trip, I want you to be looking for things that you can use as examples when people ask you afterwards, what was the trip like? So part of the debriefing is we help people craft a response. Otherwise, they come back, their minds are blown by everything that they've seen, and people say, so how was it? Oh, it was awesome. It was fantastic. It was amazing. Those words mean nothing. How about pick one word that it was life-changing, it was sobering, it was inspiring, and this is why, and then 3 reasons why that's the word you chose. So we actually help them think through that. So just before the team is going, I'm already going to be getting them ready. Maybe there's one person that you kind of latch onto while you're there. This is a person you're going to pray for. This is a person you're going to invest in a little bit more. Or perhaps there's something you need to find out about yourself. And so you get them ready. Be alert for these things. We also prepare them, when it comes just in time for the trip, I prepare them for the hardships that they might encounter: lost luggage, delays, hunger, blisters, sunburn, whatever it is. And so our team would sometimes, if you complain, everyone in the team goes, wah, wah, as like a little alarm, like, hey, that was a complaint. We don't complain. This is an honor. We get to do this. We don't have to do this. You signed up for this, We're honoring the people that are supporting us. Some widow is giving her mite so that you can fly, and now you're complaining about the lasagna that they served on the plane. It's not honoring to the Lord, and it's not honoring to the people that are supporting you.
I do have one major question left to ask you, Clint, but you do many things other than short-term missions now, and I wonder if our listeners would like to learn a little bit more, perhaps about your book, which again was entitled Holding the Rope: Short-Term Missions, Long-Term Impact. For those that are watching on video, he's actually holding up a copy, but we'll make sure that the link is available for those just listening as well. If our listeners would like to learn more from you, Clint, how can they follow you or find you online?
Well, the latest thing that we started this year is the podcast Cage-Free Theology. So Cage-Free Theology is a discussion with me and my co-host Will Brannon, and we talk about various theological issues, and we're aiming at people who are learning about these things for the first time. So we try not to use too much jargon. We don't assume that you have a PhD in theology to listen to us. It's the type of thing that hopefully if you listen to an episode on whatever it is, pre, post, and amillennialism, you'll come out after those 25 minutes understanding it at least. And so, that's Cage-Free Theology. It's on YouTube and where you get your podcast. If you want to get links to the types of things that we're doing, my handle on X or Twitter is just @ClintArcher. I was an early adopter, so I got my name @ClintArcher. And you can follow me that way.
Clint, as we finish up today, I'd like to ask you a familiar question to this audience. If you had the opportunity to speak to a local church that really wants to do short-term missions well, and their pastor is present there. What would you like to say to encourage them?
Well, if you want to do short-term missions well, firstly, that's a really good impulse. It means that you want to be involved, you want to be on the front lines, and I would say that you want a team, and I would say to the pastor and the church, you want a team that's built out of your mature believers. You know, when you're assembling a team, it's okay to have one or two who are new believers or immature, but this whole idea of like, we're just going to send the young people, or we're just going to, send these people that are immature so that they become mature. Of course, there's a maturing aspect to it, but it just makes it harder for the team leader and for the missionary if you've got a bunch of people that aren't very spiritually minded and don't have much experience in the things of the Lord. So I would say to them, if you want to do it right, work on yourself, your character, your spiritual disciplines, your walk with the Lord. And as you're faithful with little, He'll entrust you with more. And so if you want to go on a missions team, you start working on, well, am I serving here in my local church? Am I stacking chairs? Am I the one that's offering to clean up? If a baby spills something, am I the first person there? Because those are the types of people we need on these trips, people that are looking out for the needs of other people. And so I tell the pastor, when you're writing a recommendation or you're thinking through who should be on the team, picking your team leaders and the team leaders picking members, it's okay that you have a couple of immature people. That's fine. It's always helpful to balance the team so that they grow. But the majority of your team needs to be the people that are already serving, that have servants' hearts and have a proven track record of that. Nobody's going to suddenly change while they're on the plane. They're not going to become a more godly servant on the plane. You need to pick your godly servants on the ground and then fly them somewhere.
A good word. Clint, thank you so much for sharing with us a bit of how we can lift long-term value out of short-term missions. Friends, this has been Clint Archer. We'll link to his book. Clint, thanks for being on the Global Missions Podcast. Well, thanks so much for joining us again today. We are glad to be back with the Global Missions Podcast. And we hope that this short mini-series will be a blessing to you and your church. We invite you to subscribe, of course, wherever you're listening to the podcast. And don't forget, you can find us on Instagram and YouTube as well. This podcast is produced by the Global Missions Toolbox, and we hope you'll stop by that website. You can check out the resources there. They are especially for the senders like you, believers who believe in missions and support and pray for God's work and support those who go. Join us again in 2 weeks, and we will continue to explore short-term missions, part of this grand adventure of being Christ's witnesses to the ends of the earth. This podcast is produced by the Global Missions Toolbox, and we hope you'll stop by our website to see some of the resources there. We've created this group of resources especially for senders like you, believers who love God and who believe in missions and want to serve and support His activity around the world. Join us again in 2 weeks for our next episode, when we'll continue with short-term missions as a part of God's grand adventure, sending us out to being Christ witnesses to the ends of the earth.